One, two, three.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
Too. I wish you'd both go home because I find your gorilla suit offensive in tone. I just wanna be one of you guys. Knock on wood, Bigfoot. I can't find no shoes. Tired of walking around on all the things that hikers lose. If you could see my face, just the same. Just wanna be one of you guys. Yes, I talk like a samurai. Don't hold it against me, I'm just that kind of guy. And I know that we will survive. At least I hope we will. Knock on wood, Bigfoot. I can't buy no shoes. Tired of walking around and all the things that hikers lose. If you could see my face, you know we're just the same. Just wanna be one of you guys. Knock on wood. Worked out that way. I mean, I would make the woods my home, but maybe one of these days I could get me a phone and we could FaceTime then, or I don't know, play words with friends. Knock on wood, Bigfoot. I can't buy no shoes. Tired of walking around on all the things that hikers lose. If you could see my face, one big hairy guy doing my best to get by. Bigfoot. Knock on wood. Good morning.
Good morning.
That is my Bigfoot song. It has nothing to do with, we're not talking about Bigfoot today. I'm sorry if I got your hopes up, listener, and you're a Bigfoot person. You're a squatcher. I just finally finished that stupid song.
I liked the last verse. That was great.
So I had to, thank you. Yeah, we had to play it, and then, but now we're not talking about Bigfoot. So take that.
Take that, audience.
Listener. You stupid listener who got your hopes up for something advertised. Now you're not getting it, loser.
Ha ha.
Ha! Ha! If we didn't have so many problems with copyright, I would like to get that Nelson kid from The Simpsons going, yeah, but we can't do that anymore because of some reasons. I don't know.
Yeah. We got to be real tidy about copyright.
Apparently, the what would you call the what are we with? A radio group called ACR, but what are they? What would you
alternate
call
current
are they
radio
consortium?
They're
consortium?
like a alternative media laboratory and think tank producing high quality podcasts and other materials on the internets that are not owned by or affiliated with Israeli pornographers in any way.
Right, like an EU. We're like an EU of radios.
Yeah.
In America.
But we have to be very tidy about our copyright violations lest we get the mothership in trouble, which we don't want to do. So season 2 will be full of delicious content and bereft of copyright violations.
Right. That's why we are now employing CC Seeker for $0.
Yes. Congratulations.
Just with gratitude to manually re-record all Simpson sounds.
Yeah, and do the voices.
So we can use them of our own accord.
Right. Copyright-free Simpsons clips. We got to get them.
Yeah, he has to go through, and basically the past 35 years of Simpsons, he has to read line by line in his own voice.
Yeah.
As all the different characters.
That'll be great.
It'll take a while.
Thank you for volunteering to do this, CC Seeker. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, correct. So, so we're not talking about Bigfoot today. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about what I promised last time. We're going to talk about choosing your leaders and having them not be sexual degenerates.
Yeah.
A. Talk about how AIDS isn't real. B. I want to talk about Web3 and why maybe it's also a fake.
Oh no, I had high hopes for that.
Well, I know, me too. The dream of Web3 is beautiful. But let's talk about Web3 second. Let's talk about what is this man? Is there someone named like Doja Cat who's a tennis player?
No, that's Novak Djokovic. Doja Cat is some sort of performing artist.
Yeah, but the name looks like Doja Cat.
You're thinking about Novak Djokovic, who has been booted from the Australian Open because he won't get vaccinated. No, that's his real name. He's,
Novak Djokovic.
He's Eastern European or something, I think. He's good, great tennis player. He was going to defend his title in the Australian Open, and because he refuses to get sketchy, mRNA shots, Australia is basically kicking him out of the country. And there's another tennis player, a female that I don't know the name off the top of my head, but they kicked her out too. So Australia continuing to be, totally Nazified.
I didn't know anything about it. I just saw that Nigel Farage was saying something about Novak Doja Cat. And
no, he's an excellent tennis
about
player.
Novak Doja Cat, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then I want to not listen to him, and then like 3 minutes later, he's on my feed again, going Novak Doja Cat.
Well, it's whoever wins it's a shame because whoever wins the Australian Open is going to have an asterisk next to their title because Djokovic wasn't allowed to defend his spot. That's a real shame.
So what is the deal? He's not. Is he being like? Because Nigel Farage is saying that Doja Cat is being held in like prison conditions or something.
He was detained for I'm not sure how long and interrogated by Australian officials. Basically, they were going to intimidate him and bust him up by way of examining the credibility of his exemption to the vaccine requirements. And they decided that he was not credibly exempt at some point, and then sent him on the first plane back to wherever he's from.
So is he in the country now? Because Nigel Farage seems to act like
no. I think he's left. I think he's left. But for a time, he was detained by Australian authorities and interrogated in probably not very nice ways. But I don't really know what happened.
So what was his claim to exemption? I
don't know. I think he's just said I don't want to take it, and I'm a human being, and I don't have to take irreversible injections into my body for anybody, and I won't do it for you because I'm a human being. Like that, I think that was his exemption because I'm a sentient creature, image bearer of God.
Let me look. I want to see what this guy looks like. Novak.
He's great. He's a great tennis player. He's a cool dude too. I respect him for taking a stand and not.
I mean, I
defending
respect
his
him
title.
too. I didn't like his song. Like,
No, this is you're talking about.
I'm a cow.
No,
I
this
don't
Doja's
say
cat
meow.
is different.
Yeah. Well, he looks the same though.
Hey, let me just say,
just looked it up.
I'm so glad to be back on the air after
Oh yeah, you've been dead
2 weeks
for a while,
unplanned
and,
vacation by way of dying of COVID.
I gotta say, I don't like how he looks. Just judging by his face and he looks like a shady character.
What?
I mean, I appreciate what he's doing.
He's like Serbian or something. You can't hold that against him.
Yeah, that's what it is. You know, Serbs. They all have that look. A Serbian is forever stuck in 1994. Like, if you looked at any general American picture from 1994, it's like what a Serbian looks like.
Yeah, well, he currently
today.
lives in Monte Carlo. But yeah, he is Serbian. I totally pulled that out of my pants, but that's true. There you go.
Yeah. Now, what happened to that other guy that used to be good at tennis? He had curly hair.
John McEnroe.
Yeah. What happened to him?
Oh, he got old.
Oh, so that's been a while.
Yeah, that's like the 80s. Dog.
See, I don't follow tennis. It's all I don't know. Tennis to me, this is my problem with sports, and I enjoy sports, but I also don't.
Yeah. Well, it takes it's a big time commitment to follow sports.
It's a big time, but my problem with sports is this is why I always liked wrestling and boxing, and also track and field, because they seem like honest, like who can run the fastest.
Yeah.
That's a very simple thing. But like tennis and basketball and stuff, they're so artificial. Like it's like we got a racket and a net and there's lines on the floor.
I mean, I don't think tennis isn't artificial in the same way that, say, basketball is. I don't think people aren't like faking.
They both have nets. They both have lines on the floor, and they both have.
Yeah, but like basketball players and soccer players like fake being fouled all the time to screw up the game and stop play.
Well,
and you can't do that in tennis. You just have to like nut up and play the game.
I don't mean like people are being shady with it. I mean like just the whole premise itself is not found in nature.
So, it's a little too contrived. Okay.
It's contrived. It's like there's lines on the ground, and they like. Tennis and basketball, both they involve nets, balls that have to bounce.
Yeah.
Lines on the floor in which things can or cannot happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it all just feels like whenever I sit down to play it, and it can be fun to play. I used to play like racquetball sometimes, which is sort of similar.
Yeah.
It can be fun, but it's also like, why are we doing this? why are these lines here? Like why can the lines be elsewhere? And it feels too sports games often feel too contrived to me.
So you just want the simple stuff, like wrestle me or foot race me.
Yeah, like wrestle me, and then let's see who can. It's a very primitive.
But wrestling is really contrived also, because I don't know if you ever just tried to wrestle like a high school wrestling champ, because what happens is you immediately pin them, and then they cry about you violated this or that rule that you've never heard of because you're not a high school wrestling champ.
Well, I agree with that to an extent. Yeah. There are like maybe too many rules on like what you can and cannot do. Like say judo.
Yeah.
Right? Judo was ruined by the Olympics.
Sure.
Because in olden days, judo had a lot of normal takedowns that would be used in what you might consider freestyle wrestling.
Yeah.
Or I don't say Greco. People think Greco-Roman wrestling and freestyle are the same. It's not.
No.
College is freestyle wrestling for the most part. But you have because the easiest way to take someone to the ground is to remove their legs from underneath them. The simplest method.
Sure.
And so there's lots of ways to do that. But the Olympics committee likes like anything else that's a corporation trying to get viewers was like, this isn't as exciting as if we just say you can't really grab below the waist, and so then all the takedowns have to be big throws.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about big throws. If you're ever against the judo guy, all you have to do is place one hand on his dominant hip, like if he's right-handed, and he can't do anything because he's limited to that. Because they all of them use their hip. They turn their hip into you to throw you, and if you just hold it away,
Yeah.
they're like, I'm bested.
Seems like a bug.
It's a bug it's a bug because they don't allow all the other stuff that would navigate that, because it's just about. So like if you go to a judo class now and they're all in competition rules, they will have this dumb rule, and so I agree with you to an extent, but still like. That's a lot more close to natural than like, I need a racket.
Yeah, maybe.
You don't find a racket in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas trees don't grow rackets. You know?
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe one day when we've achieved the communist utopia.
Yeah. It's just around the corner.
And like football, like pass interference should be allowed. You should be. That's your whole job, is to interfere with the pass happening.
Yeah.
You know, that never made any sense. I always thought the game would be, and so that's my problem with sports, is that it feels so. Not that they can't be fun. I enjoy playing baseball sometimes, but it's just a little too cutesy.
Yeah, you just want to break into a stick fight with somebody.
Yeah, or like I did shot put in high school. It's like, who can throw this weight the farthest? And that's very like a primitive game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something you could have played in ancient Rome, or I don't know, in Mongolia.
Sure.
You could have played who can throw this rock the farthest. I think they did play that game.
Yeah,
actually.
probably did.
Yeah, that was a game I know at least the Scottish people did with the Highland games.
Mm-hmm.
Is who can throw this rock the farthest.
And who can throw this tree the farthest?
Who can throw this? Have you ever tried caper toss? It's very difficult.
No way. That's instant hernia territory for me. No way.
It's very difficult. You have to get it's all this balancing.
Yeah.
It's very hard. So I always enjoyed those kind of sports. Now, not to say that quote unquote primitive sports can't also get ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it Iceland that does the wife carrying race or something?
I've never heard of that, but that sounds great. I would win that, man.
It's a race. It's a couples race.
Yeah.
I don't think she has to necessarily be your wife. It just has to be a man-woman team.
Yeah.
But it started as a wife carry. Where, like, there was people in Iceland, they were drunk after they drank their fermented shark oil or whatever.
Right.
They have over in Iceland land.
Weird fish beer. Yeah.
Their weird fish beer. Where they're like, we're like Harry Potter with butterbeer, except it's rotten shark. Pepper. And
that's true.
They were like,
true,
after they got drunk one night, Oleg said to Svinenog, he said, hey, Svinenog, I bet I can carry my wife faster than you, because your wife is a fatty. And Svinenog was like, Helga is not fat. I will race you. And then everyone at the bar, they picked up their wives on their shoulders, and they all had to like run a mile. And this has become like an obstacle course. It involves like ditches and water and stuff now.
Yep.
And it's pretty interesting watching them train, because the woman's training is very unique in that she's just trying to learn how to position her weight in such a way that she is most easily carryable.
Mm-hmm.
And for many of them, this appears to be a sort of upside down position for her.
Yep.
Be held
Mm-hmm.
in on the back.
Yeah.
Right.
She put her legs around the neck and
like her thighs are like, so she's upside down.
Yeah.
Right. And her face is like toward his butt.
Right.
And then her knees and thighs are carrying the weight of her on her shoulders, like she's an upside down backpack.
Yeah.
Right. But then they have to run through ditches of water. So she has to practice holding her breath because she's underwater. Right, near his butt.
I'm taking this up with my wife. This is a great relationship building sport.
It really, I think it could be. I think it's also a good way you can injure your wife or yourself.
Well, she needs to toughen up a little bit. Well, it'll be great.
Yeah. So I don't think you're allowed to use any ropes. They tried that for a little bit, where you could like tie your wife to you, but that had some injuries associated with it, I think. So they banned the rope. So now you just have to And it may not be Iceland. I forget where. It's one of those places where people have names like Svergog or whatever.
Yeah, unpronounceable gibberish. Yeah.
Svergog, son of Jörgabard.
Could be Wales.
Whatever. Yeah. So, the wife carrying. So that's at least that's less contrived than tennis.
Yeah.
Is my
I mean,
point.
sometimes you got to carry your wife.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes she has to be an upside down backpack.
Yeah.
And so that's my problem with sports. That's my problem with Doja Cat is he looks like a Serb.
Djokovic.
Whatever. It's the same thing. And like he and Doja Cat are actually the same person. That's my position.
Oh, wow. That's quite a...
I know that's not really defensible position.
So
but it
you
is
can
my
still
position.
hold it.
Since when has anything I've held need to be defensible?
Good point.
So Web3. Are you familiar with this concept? First of all, for the listeners, many people don't even probably know we're in Web 2.
Yes.
Most people just probably get online and they look at TikTok, and then they get on Instagram and feel bad that they don't look as pretty as the people on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then someone gives them a recipe. They try to make it and they fail, and then they go to sleep crying. And that's probably most people's experience of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But you're technically, listener, listening using what many people refer to as Web 2, Web 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And Web 2.0 was really when we started going with what we called the internet. It was the World Wide Web. You remember that?
Yes.
When it was the World Wide Web.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the olden times.
You would use a Gopher search.
You'd use a Gopher search. You would ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
And such. What was it? Alta Vista was that one? Is that something else?
Yeah, that was one of the first web search services.
Yeah, and it was not good.
No, I mean none of them were.
We tried.
It's okay.
They were maybe better than Google is now.
Right.
But for a while, Google was really good. But so there was Web 2. Was sort of when everything became centralized around these big tech companies like, say, Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the Facebook.
Yep.
Or the Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. Everything was like, now most people's internet is like 5 websites, like Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And like that's a lot of people. Like people don't spend a lot of time going to individual websites now.
No, I guess not.
They go to big conglomerates. Like a business doesn't even need a website. They just need a Yelp page. Right? In a lot of cases.
Which is a shame because websites are better.
They are, but no one's going to go to your website because that involves the slightest amount of work.
Yeah.
Right? Where you have to type in something.
Yeah.
Manually.
Mm.
They just want to go to a big list of places and click on it. And arguably this is more efficient, but also people are just lazy. So that's Web 2. Web 2 is the social web. Like, and also the big giant companies are the really, like, all the other internet is still there. You can make your own website if you want. No one will go to it. Right?
I think the Web 2 is referring to like the power structure behind the services that people use.
Yes. Now, I mean, that's not totally true. Actually, a lot of we get for the size of our show, we get a decent amount of people going to the website. I don't know what you people do there.
Yeah, I don't either.
Thank you for going.
Our website address, by the way, is mapsoc.org, mapsoc.org.
Yeah, mapsoc.org. Yeah. We need to put some more stuff on for people to do on there. Like maybe they could play a flash game.
Yeah.
Or they could see a dancing baby gif or
we
something.
We put a chat room on there.
Ooh, a chat. Yeah, why don't we have a chat room?
If ACR can do a chat room for their shows, we can do a chat room for ours too.
I think we need a forum that starts out normal and then just devolves into complete schizo posting over like 5 years where people are just talking about how...
Well, that would occur within 5 minutes.
If you would take ivermectin, then you will no longer be gay, and that would be like one thing.
Yeah.
Because it cured you of worm parasites. or something.
Yep.
And that would be the forum, and that would be great. So maybe we should put a forum on there.
Okay.
Because I like forums. Forums are where you find some of the most interesting content on the internet.
True.
You don't find it on any of the. So the internet is still there, and you can still use it, but the traffic is extremely dominated by a handful of large companies, right? Now that's Web 2. Web 1 was premised on the idea. The dream of Web 1 was that everyone would be both a content producer and publisher, but also a consumer. So like everyone would be a network of peers, right? That was the idea. Are you familiar with this idea?
Yes.
It would be like a network of peers. And you would get on there and you would have your own computer that was like a server on the internet. And you could have everyone have their own website. So like people be like, what's old Spinorak up to in his wife carrying contest? And you would go to spinorak.com.
Yep.
Or probably .me. Because .com used to mean commercials for commercial things instead of just default.
Yeah.
Right? Com was commercial. Org was organized. Gov was governor. Right? So it'd be like something like personal, like .me. And you would go to or.me, and you would see his latest post about his wife carrying and how he drowned his second wife on accident running through a water ditch, and now he was on to his third wife. And that would be what you would read. And like and then if you wanted to tell him about something, you would use email from your own email on your own computer server, and it would be like I don't know, if you were a Serb, like a tennis player, it would be like dojacat@dojacat.me.
Yep.
And you would say, "Hey, Sverger Snorgerson, I'm Doja Cat, the tennis player, and I love your wife carrying. Send." And then he would receive it at snorgelsturgelson@snorgelsturgelson.me.
Yep.
Right?
Like the amazing days when everybody had,
and everyone would be in love and happy. And that was the dream.
It's just kind of crazy to me that the amazing days when everybody had their own web server and their own little island on the internet were like, the 90s and the 2000s, and now nobody has it. It's like I feel like that's a big regression for what the internet is supposed to be.
Well, I agree with you. The internet was a lot more colorful back in the day, which is a recurring theme of complaint on this show.
It is
the state of the internet, right? Because not only has it gotten blank, it's just gotten boring.
Yeah.
People, there's no because everyone's personality is filtered through this is my Facebook page. It looks like every other Facebook page.
Yeah.
Hey, did you know my favorite color is Facebook blue? That's what it appears to be, because that's the only thing that's here, right? And at least there was a transition period where you had LiveJournal or MySpace, where you had a big server, but it was still highly customizable. It was your own web page, and it would be completely loud and stupid.
Yeah. Oh, MySpace was great because everybody's page looked crazy, and you couldn't even. It was almost unnavigable sometimes because it was so crazy looking.
Oh yeah, and it would be you'd log on to it. You go to your friend's MySpace page, and it would be you'd turn it on, and then it would start to load very slowly, and then it would be. Wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. We could cut ties, and it'd just be playing loud, and you couldn't stop it at all.
No.
There was no way to find the stop button. Your friend's webpage would just blare music at you.
Yeah.
And there was where did I turn it off? And you couldn't in any way, right? And then until it fully loaded, and then you could find the stop button. But it took forever to load because they plastered over their page 70,000 flash emojis. They were all trying to play at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was more fun. Right? But I want to talk about a recent article by Moxie Marlinspike.
Who?
Moxie Marlinspike.
Okay.
He is the he's the creator and co-founder and CEO of the Signal app, Signal Messenger.
Oh, yeah, I use Signal, yeah.
Yeah, Matthew his real name is Matthew Rosenfeld.
Okay.
But he's gone by Moxie Marlin's bike for ages. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about Web3. So Web3 is this beautiful idea where people were like, what if we took the advantages of Web 2 and then using and they wave a magic wand through the air like the rainbow of the more you know, right? Thing from the PSA.
Yeah.
They wave it through the air and they go, decentralization.
Yeah, the blockchain.
And it goes boom, boom, boom. Right? What if we get all the things of Web 2, all the benefits, with the personality, individuality, and freedom of Web 1? Doon, doon, doon. And that guy that played Geordi on Star Trek Next Generation, who was the blind black guy.
Yeah.
He comes on and he reads a book to you.
Mm.
This is my reading Rainbow, and then it's all beautiful.
I loved reading Rainbow.
I know. And so that was a great one, and that would be great. That's what they say. But that does but they don't really have a plan for how this would happen. It's just a dream within a fancy, within a speculation.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's like, what if we did this? It's like, yeah, that would be cool. How do you want to do it? And they go, blockchain.
Yeah, right.
And you don't really, it's like, but what does that mean though? Right? Like, what's going to happen? And they go, Ethereum. Yeah. Yeah, but okay, yeah, Ethereum, fine. But then technically, what's gonna occur? Bitcoin. It's like, I know, but and they just keep repeating the same thing. Yeah. And now they go, and then you go, okay, but what about all these issues? And they go, shh. And you're like, you're not saying anything, right? And this is Moxie's complaint. Mm-hmm. And Moxie, despite being a cryptographer, like he's in the traditional sense of like he encrypts stuff and makes encryption protocols. Yeah. He's not in the crypto space, really. He hasn't, because he's a computer scientist person. He has computer scientist qualms with it, which he laid out in a recent article that I thought brought to light some interesting problems with not only the cryptography / decentralization space in general, but also this dream of Web3, right? So here's the thing. If there's anything we have learned, like, okay, the past, let's say 30 years, what have we really learned? What have we really, like, as a society, as a people, as a globe that may be a plane?
I mean, we haven't learned anything.
True. Could we point to anything that we have learned? And Moxie says we can point to one thing with certainty.
Okay.
Just people don't want to run their own servers.
Yeah, true. I mean, I don't.
And never will.
Yeah.
So, and he's right. They don't, because again, they lack even the motive to type in a web page and a URL, much less run their own. So the premise of Web 1, like I said, was that everyone would be a consumer of content, but also a publisher, right? And you'd all have your own web server, your own website, your own email, your own like finger server for status messages and all this stuff. But Moxie says this cannot be emphasized enough. This is not what people want. Mm-hmm. It sounded great, but people don't want to do that. Even nerds don't want to run their own servers anymore. No one does it.
I mean, just getting on Urbit is a big pain.
Yeah, and that's like running. It's sort of like running your own server. That's basically what it is. And it's a. You have to be technically savvy. Yeah. Urbit is really the only Web3 thing going at the moment, for real.
Right, yeah.
Like, it is, like, no one talks about it because it's, like, so nerdy, no one's actually on it.
Yeah.
They're all like, Web3, it's gonna be great, we're gonna have these weird pictures of monkeys and lions that are NFTs, And we're gonna be on the blockchain with Bitcoin. Ooh, it's gonna be cute. We're gonna be on a hoverboard with neon. But no one has actually done it, right? And the people that have, it's so nerdy that no one wants to use it because it's like, that's difficult. I have to what? What planet? What? And that's the response, right? And I have 2 orbit planets.
Yeah, I got one.
And it's cool. It is cool, but it is like if I wanted to sign on right now, I'd have to do some work to remember how. Because
it's a whole big procedure, right?
I'd be like, what? You got to do the thing, and there's like a command line thing. If you have to enter a command line, it's not ever going to be something for the public, right? It's just not going to happen. I hate to burst your bubble. People are not ever going to be that big on doing stuff. So the surefire way, here's how Web 2 happened, because the surefire way for financial success was to take something people had to do server side in Web 1 and just turn that into a client side thing where you handled the server. Right? So are you familiar with server client model?
Yes.
Yeah. So explain to our listeners server client model, because some of them out there like server client.
So a server is the computer that's connected to the internet and it's always on and it's sitting there with all the content that you want to access, and then the client is the one who wants to access the content and read it or enjoy it. And so that they make a connection over the internet, they download that content for a minute and enjoy it at the client side, and then it's held in cache for a minute, but it doesn't stay on that computer because it stays on the server. So if you have a home server full of pirated movies that you got off of Napster or whatever, that would be you would have that's your little server, and then you would log into it or connect to it on your phone or on your Xbox or I don't know, whatever, and you'd call up that data and watch it, but it stays on the little server, and nobody's like sitting at the server most of the time. It's just sitting on a shelf humming away, serving you things.
Right. Yeah, it's a good explanation. Like, the server actually holds all the information, and then the client computer is just a portal through which you view it, basically.
Yeah.
So like Google has, if you use Gmail, Google actually has the content of all your email. Like, if you were to look on your computer, you don't have all of your thousands of Gmails there, but you get on the website and you say, show me my emails, and it gives it to you. Through a little portal, a little window screen into the server, right?
So that's cloud.
The server, and that's a lot.
The cloud is just
Google
servers.
handles the server for you. Yeah. So, and that is the surefire success of the 90s was to say, hey, this complicated thing that people don't want to do themselves, let's do that, and this regulate what used to be a server side thing for most people to them being a client of it. And then you would make $1 bazillion, right? Whatever you did. Like, it's still technically possible, listener. You can do this today if you wanted to. You can set up your own email server. You can do it. You can be your own little Gmail, right? Yeah. But no one...
I actually did that for kicks a couple years ago, and it was a giant pain.
Yeah. The big pain in the butt. But it can be a useful exercise just to see like what's actually happening. You learn a lot about like how computers are working. But you can do it if you want to, or you can spend all day and hassle, and then when someone tries to send you then you can have just constantly broken email links. Yeah. Or you can just have Google do it for you. And most people choose Google do it for me, please.
Or you can pay Proton Mail. And they'll do it for you.
Or you can pay Proton Mail, right? So that was the people do not want to. That's the first lesson that we probably learned from the past 30 years. The second lesson is that protocols move a lot more slowly than platforms. So it's been over 30 years since email, right? Email is still unencrypted.
Mm-hmm. In most cases,
it will probably never be encrypted because. If you want to change a protocol for something that's used around the whole world, basically impossible.
Yeah.
Like, it would be like saying, so there's other kinds of protocols in the physical world. Like, one protocol is how wide are railroad tracks?
Yeah.
And everyone in the world uses the same exact width. So you have standard tracks and all the trains can run on them. If Minnesota was like, well, it would have suited us better if we had 2 foot wider railroad tracks. Everyone would be like, this sucks. We have to go here, and then when we go through Minnesota, we have to get on like a train track adapter to make our wheels a foot longer on each side, and then drive through and then get off. This is awful. And that's why protocols don't. In fact, listener, the width of the train tracks. This is how much protocols don't change. Is basically dictated by the width of a carriage pulled by horses in ancient Rome. That's actually true, because that was the biggest amount. That was how big they built the tunnels, and so then when they were building the railroad tracks, they had to get pieces through the old tunnels, and they could only fit if they were so wide. So we'll just make the track as big as we made the horse carriage in width. And that's how much the protocol doesn't change. It's like whoever made the first width of a horse carriage, that dictated how wide Amtrak's cars are now. So that's a protocol. And protocols are useful, right? They're very useful, but they're not adaptive to change. And so like email is just what it is. And it's not the best, but it does its thing, right?
Right.
So it's been 30 years and people are like, we got to learn how to encrypt email so people can send messages and that would be great and blah, blah, blah. And then like WhatsApp goes from unencrypted to full encryption in a year because it's a platform and they can just say, let's just do it. And they just handle everything on the server side, and then the clients nothing different happens for them. They just say, give me the information, here's my password. And then all the encryption happens behind the scenes and they just give you a portal. Right. In the same way, people are still trying to standardize sharing video reliably over IRC, like Internet Relay Chat, which is great. That's one of the great places you can find forums. But meanwhile, Slack creates emojis based on your face, right? So it's been 30 years, and IRC is like, we almost got video sharing down. Almost. Like you can't share a video in email. You can send a link to a video, but you can't
it's too big.
Video.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, right?
Well, I think it's interesting to note that even these new app platforms, you're not even really a client. Like the app itself is the client,
right.
And you're
like a client of a client.
Looking into it through a portal, through like a UI, but you don't even you can't even touch the back end operation of the thing, really at all. So you're like a whole nother level of separated from the infrastructure and the control of whatever's going on.
Yeah. And so this has been a problem because in the technology world, success is defined by speed. And if you're always mired in just non-movement, it doesn't really, you're going to get outpaced by any sort of technology or company that comes along and does it fast. And so people still use, I guess people still use email.
I use email. Email's great. Why. Email's great, man. Yeah. It's simple and easy and gets the job done.
So, but Web3 intends to be different. It'd be like, listen, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do Web 1 with Web 2 and do distributed apps, right? So, so Moxie decided to experiment with this, and he made an app. He made a D-app. D-app means decentralized app. Called it Autonomous Art. So lets anyone mint a token for an NFT by making a visual contribution to it.
Okay.
So it's like a collective art project, and you can pay money to add something to this artwork, this visual digital artwork. And then, but the cost to do so would increase every time. So the first person pays 2 cents, the next person pays 4 cents. And then every time someone else does it, that money is distributed to everyone that came before them. Like a pyramid scheme.
NFT pyramid scheme.
It's an NFT pyramid scheme. He made an NFT pyramid scheme just for fun. Right? At the time he wrote this article that I'm referencing, over $38,000 had gone into it. Right? So He also made a D app called First Derivative that allows you to create, discover, and exchange NFT derivatives which track an underlying NFT, similar to financial derivatives which track an underlying asset. And then he writes a little winky face, like, I made a pyramid scheme, and then I made a financial derivative of that pyramid scheme, just for fun. So, but both, sort of like how you get this. He was just sort of getting a feel for this the distributed space. So to be clear, though, so there's nothing. Here's the thing, though: nothing distributed is about the apps themselves. They're just normal websites. The distributedness refers to where the state of and the logic permissions for updating the state of the content lives, and that lives on a blockchain instead of a quote unquote centralized database. So you have this website, you go on there and you update the thing, and the information is stored on a blockchain somewhere rather than on a centralized server database. Okay. So we've decentralized the server. That's what blockchain has done. The server is not any one person's thing. It's everybody's thing. Right?
And I think the deal is anybody can be a part of maintaining it and thereby have some share of decision-making power. You just open a node.
Correct. Yeah. But Moxie says, look, one thing that felt strange to him was that when people would talk about cryptocurrency, there's almost no attention given to the client-server interface. When they talk about blockchains and distributed trust and leaderless consensus and all these things, they get starry-eyed and they're like, ooh, blockchain. But the reality is that they gloss over, and I know I've shilled for Bitcoin on this show too. I still am like Bitcoin and all that, but there's a legitimate problem. They gloss over the reality that the clients of these apps can't actually participate in those distributed mechanics. So, like, when you sign on with your wallet, let's say you have a wallet. Let's say you have a MetaMask wallet. And I'm going to speak while I'm taking off my coat. Let's say you have a MetaMask wallet, right? Okay, your MetaMask wallet doesn't actually hold the blockchain on it. It's just a, you just sign on to MetaMask, and then that, again, is an app which acts as a client for wherever the servers are.
Right.
So, when you sign on to MetaMask, all this decentralization is taking place, you're not actually participating in. You are still just a client of some other thing, which is doing the serving. Yes. Now, the serving is decentralized, but the client side is the same.
Yes.
Right? So blockchains are designed to be a network of peers, but it's not really possible for your mobile device or your browser to be one of those.
Right. You have to operate, really, to be a peer, you have to operate a node.
You have to operate a node. And most people, again, are not going to want to operate a node.
It's like having your own email server.
But even more complicated. Right? It's not going to happen for most people. So again, we find ourselves in the situation of though the content of the servers is decentralized, the servers themselves are not actually, they're still in the hands of a few, and most people's experience and actually power with the platform is the same. They're still just going to be a client of some other server system. Right? And like this is a technical problem. Like, so Ethereum actually not actually even refers to servers as clients. There's not even a word for an untrusted client server interface that will have to exist somewhere. Yeah. And also Ethereum never acknowledges, like that Vitalik guy is like, whoa, I'm anorexic is my Ethereum. It's never acknowledged that if Ethereum were actually to be successful and worldwide adopted, there would be billions more clients than servers, which is a technical issue that seems hard to to overcome, right? So whether it's like running a D app or something, that a D app or something has to interact with the blockchain somehow in order to modify or render the work of art you've produced, or you want in your NFT or your Bitcoins, right? And that's not possible to do on the client side. This gets a little technical, I know, but bear with me. Since the blockchain can't live on your phone, see?
Yeah.
So the only alternative is to interact with the blockchain via a node that's running on a server somewhere. But as we know, people don't want to run their own servers. And as it happens, right, companies have emerged to sell APIs, application protocol interfaces, to access the Ethereum node they run as a service. This is all sounding very familiar.
Yes.
To what already happened.
The decentralized web is rapidly centralizing.
Correct. This is all sounding very familiar to what already happened, right? So basically, at this point, there are basically two companies, and almost all DApps use either Infura or Alchemy in order to interact with the blockchain. When you connect a wallet to MetaMask, like MetaMask to a DApp, and the DApp interacts with the blockchain, MetaMask is just making calls to Infura. He's one of two companies. Infura is like the Google of the blockchain, or one of them is going to be. Because all the MetaMask does is say, hey, what is the value in this wallet ID? And it asks Infura, and Infura looks up the blockchain and sends it back to MetaMask, which reports it to you. And that's all that's happening. So,
hang on a second. Let's step back a little bit here, because one of the things that crypto people always get hyped about is that the governance of the thing is decentralized among all these people that are running the nodes, and so they are like the Senate of the blockchain, and no one person can just control it. But that isn't the reality anymore. It sounds like just like everything else, a handful of very large corporations actually hold the decision-making authority because they're actually running the real node, right? And all these, just because you're accessing the blockchain through their API that doesn't give you any governance, right? I mean,
right. So like it's the same with email. You can even now run your own email server, and you can run an Ethereum node or a Bitcoin node right now if you wanted to. Sit down and figure out how to do it. It's totally open for you to do that. However, when people want to access the blockchain, right, and they don't want to run their own server, they need a client-side application. And that application then has to ask somebody to say, what is the value in the blockchain for this thing? And those two somebodies they ask are these two companies, mostly, Infura and Alchemy, which have set up, they have nodes, and they... in theory, they could just ask you, right, if you have a node. If you have a node, like they could get on there and they could email you and say, what is the value of my NFT right now? And where's its state? And they could wait for you to get to your email and then sign onto your computer, look around and say, oh yeah, this is the tech, and then you copy and paste it into the email and send it back. And that would work. Or they could have an application that did all that automatically. And that's what they're going to choose. And those applications that do that automatically are currently, like MetaMask does that. And MetaMask does that, and it emails Alchemy, and they have a node, and it looks that up, and then it sends it to MetaMask. And so you can do it. So it could be done, in theory, but that would take a while. It would be a little clunky, right? And that's not what
right. And so nobody actually does it. And so therefore the idea that the power and the authority is distributed in reality is not the case, even though on paper it could be.
On paper it could be, and it's totally possible.
I mean, if I were to set up a Bitcoin node in my garage and just run it, that would give me some micro fraction of a vote in the governance. Does that matter in reality? No, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, I might get a little bit of Bitcoin for like handling transactions, on my server, but that's it. I mean, the die is cast on ownership of the blockchain, and the guys that own it are the guys that own it.
Yes, and it's even just functionality because people are like, well, but they can't change like what's on the wall. It's like, yeah, well, they can though.
Yeah,
they can't change if it's on the blockchain, but they can change what the wallet says.
Like
because the wallet is just looking up. I'll give you an example. So, well, actually, I'll use his example. So he just as a experiment. Moxie made an NFT, which is a non-fungible token, which are sort of stupid. But when most people think of NFTs, they think of images and digital art, right? But NFTs actually, for the most part, although again, in theory they don't actually store that digital art information, all those bits and bytes that make up the art, on the chain. Because that would be too expensive. Because every time you did it, you would be doing megabytes and megabytes and megabytes of data going back and forth. And it would just be, every time you wanted to update the chain, it would be updating megabytes and megabytes and megabytes of Ethereum things, and Ethereum is outrageously expensive. So, instead of actually storing the data of your art on chain, what most NFTs do, and people don't actually realize this, which is another reason I don't like NFTs, is NFTs actually just contain a URL that points to the data on a server.
Oh no. And
that's all that they actually do.
So if that server goes down or whatever, or
or you just change the data on the place where it's pointing to.
Like poof, your NFT now contains a broken link.
Right. Or as you'll see what Moxie did. So Moxie says what surprised me about it is the standards. There's no hash commitment for the data located at the URL. Right? The URL often just points to a VPS running Apache somewhere. Anyone with access to that machine, anyone who buys that domain name in the future, or anyone that compromises that machine can change the image, title, description, etc. for the NFT to whatever they'd like, regardless of whether or not they own the token. Because the token just points to a URL that points to the place.
Oh man, this is worse than I thought.
Right? So all of those NFT artworks going for like millions of dollars.
The monkeys. Yeah.
You're just buying a token that contains a URL which points to it on someone else's server, and if they own the server, it's just gone. They can do whatever they want. So, as an experiment, because again, this is a client-server problem, and all blockchain has done, and it's a big step, I'm not hating on them, but it's important to point out, is that blockchain is strictly a server thing. It's a server-to-server protocol of how it's decentralizing the server. The client way they access it is still heavily centralized, and that remains an issue. So, as an experiment, Moxie made an NFT that changes based on who is looking at it, since the web server that serves the image can choose to serve different images based on the IP or user agent. So he made one that looked one way on the OpenSea, which is a NFT purchasing and thing platform, if you're not familiar. And another one is just called Rarible. So same NFT, but it looked one way on OpenSea, looked another way on Rarible. And when you buy it and open it from your crypto wallet, it will always be displayed as a poop emoji. Because there's no way to verify that what you see and bid on is what will actually show up on because it's just pointing to a URL, and that URL could, in theory, and in practice, as he did, have it where, depending on your IP address or the application you use to access it, point to a different piece of artwork. Right? There's nothing unusual about how that NFT works. That's just how they are. So many of the highest priced NFTs could be turned into a poop emoji at any time. If someone just has access to either the domain name, which has the URL, or the server that holds them. And that's all you would have to do.
Think about, going back to your concept that crypto is like an inflation burning machine. Think about all the dollars that would be shredded instantly if somebody had just bought up the big NFT serving domains and just replaced them all with poop emojis.
Yeah, which maybe it should be a project of ours. I don't know how we could do it.
But think of all the wealth that would be instantly vaporized.
You wouldn't even have to purchase it. You just have to hack the server and then change because the NFT just has a URL. So if you just hack the server that URL points to, and then change it, then your NFT would show up as a different thing.
Think of all the Zoomers, like their faces melting and their eyes bleeding when they see all their NFTs turn to poop emojis.
This is another thing why I always say everything is fake, because so many people, like at this point, millions of people have like really, they've gotten into NFTs and they know the ins and the outs and the backwards and they use fancy words and they have blogs and YouTubes and back and forth and back and forth. But if you actually no one actually bothered of all those millions of people to like drill down and say, how does this actually work though? And they say, oh, I'm just buying a URL that points to somewhere. And
there's a lesson.
That's how the whole
there's
world
a lesson
works.
in here is that if you don't control the hardware, you don't really have any control at all on the internet.
You don't have any. This is the gold. People are right. If you don't own it, you don't own it. If you can't hold it, you don't own it. That's the people that are always been about gold and silver are like, listen, paper, gold, and silver is not real. You might one day be able to exchange it for it, but you might not.
Like you can trade it. You can trade it 100 times, and 99 times the trade will go fine, and then 100 times you'll find out that certificate has been rehypothecated or whatever.
Well, I think Alex Jones is correct that silver is probably, the amount of paper silver is probably 400 times the amount of actual silver.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that stuff is like, it's almost as bad as the repeatability crisis in science, is just how much of the paper assets that are supposed to be backed by real commodities are just totally fake.
Yeah, it's complete. And that is actually like a major fault point.
It's provable, but nobody. It's totally provable, but nobody wants to acknowledge it or do anything about it because the game is still playing. This game's still rolling. Like there's money to be made.
The game's still rolling
on trading fake stuff.
And at some point, like I remember, so I was in high school, and we had it was a history class, and the history teacher was, of course, also one of the football coaches. Because that's what they do with the football coaches, is they say, just repeat whatever this textbook says. You don't have to know anything. Like a history class is very easy to teach. You don't have to know math or do a science experiment. You just say, just tell them what this book says. And they say, okay, I can do that. And they also don't care, right? Because they want to be thinking about football. And so every historical reference they use will be like, and this is like when you're on the fourth and long.
Napoleon was at 4th and long.
Napoleon, it was 4th and long, and everything is a football reference, right? And so, but I remember him. We had a thing about the Great Depression, and I don't remember anything from high school at all, as far as what I learned. And I think that's true for most people, because it's a pointless activity to go to high school or to go to school. You don't remember anything. But the one thing that stuck out in my mind, this is his one sentence. This is the one thing I remember. Because even when I was 16 or 17, I remember thinking, that's not true. That can't be true. He said, it was the Great Depression, and he said, I forget what the actual bill is. We could look it up, the Federal Reserve or something. He said, we never have to worry about a Great Depression again because this act which was passed guarantees there will always be the money to pay the thing. And I remember going, and everyone was like, and I remember going, just in my head going, that's crazy.
Oh, man.
That's not real. This is people writing it on paper. And I forget the act. It's on the tip of my, it's like financial security, something. Anyway. Basically, it was just, we gave ourselves the permission to always be able to print the money that we say we can.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking, well, that is not actually real though. That's the one thing I remember from high school, and it was fake. So I'm sure the rest of the stuff was not even cogent enough to be fake. But at least he gets props because he actually made a cogent sentence, which is not something most high school teachers ever do. Right. But so it's not, it's the amount of, that's a big fault point in our system. And one day, just like with the Great Depression, it will happen sort of overnight or over the course of a few weeks. And it won't really seem to have anything that sparks it. We won't really know why it happened now and not later or earlier. But this fact that so many commodities, and not just gold and silver, like all commodities, the amount we say we have on paper is not the actual amount we have. And that will come up and be an issue at some point and cause a big problem. Because a lot of this wealth that we so quote unquote have is just not, it doesn't actually exist in the world. And if we ever tried to use it, this is why they don't want you spending money. They want you saving it in the bank. Because if everyone tried to spend money, it would not work. Well,
they got to undo, if they don't want runaway inflation, they have to undo all the money printing at some point, and maybe.
Right, which maybe that's the NFTs. Maybe that. You got
to take them back out of existence.
I don't think anyone thought that much about it, to be honest. But that is an interesting thing I think about. So. What happened when he made this NFT that changed to a poop emoji is that shortly thereafter, like within a few hours, his NFTs got taken down off OpenSea and Rarible.
They can just take them down, huh? So much for that immutable ledger.
He goes to OpenSea and he says the item you requested is no longer available on OpenSea. It will not be visible or accessible to anyone browsing the marketplace. And the takedown notice suggests that he violated the terms of service, but he read the terms and he says, I don't see anything that prohibits what I did, but nonetheless. But he says, what I found most interesting, though, is that after OpenSea removed my NFT, it was also no longer appearing in my crypto wallet.
Oh.
How is this possible? Because the crypto wallet is just asking OpenSea what's there. That's all it is.
So it's on an immutable ledger, but nobody can see it because they're going through APIs.
No one, if you ran your own Ethereum node, you could see it, unless you do. But if you don't, though, you can't actually because you're just. If you ask the server, tell me what that image is, and the server says no,
man.
Right? Then the server says no, I won't want to show you. Then it's like, well, you can't see it unless you go set up. It's still now his artwork is still there on the blockchain. It is immutable, but you can't actually look at it unless you're running your own node. This is the crypto. It's the client server problem, right? And it's not really designed. Ethereum and other blockchains have been designed that it's a network of peers, but that's not true. It's not really possible for a mobile device or your browser to be one of those peers, which is it's a fundamental sort of flaw. So like MetaMask is a wallet. You can do it. Has a little fox emoji. I have a MetaMask. I don't think I have anything in it right now. Because Ethereum is outrageously expensive. It's like, I would like to transfer $50. That's great. It'll cost $2,000. Like, what? Yeah. What? What? Like, that's crypto for you. It's like, okay, well.
Yeah. Some of you crypto guys need to actually go out and try to do some transactions with the crypto you're thinking about investing in. And if the gas fees are higher than the transaction, maybe not a good investment either. If it's not useful to anyone because it's too expensive, maybe don't invest in it.
And they keep saying, all the Ethereum people keep saying, oh, we're going to fix that soon. And they've been saying that for years. And it doesn't seem to, because it's just, because again, that's a protocol sort of they've built.
Yep.
And protocols are very difficult to ever
This reminds me of Decentraland. And their crypto mana was out there, and hang on, somebody's walking up to my house. I gotta pause. We just gotta pause here for a minute.
Okay. Go shoot them. Oh, we have to pause. How are you, listener? Are you having a good day? Good morning. I'm sleepy myself. Oh, I guess now since he's gone. I should do what most people do is we have an advertisement. Go to my Substack, matsumoto.substack.com. MATSUMOTO. It's fun. Be a free subscriber. That'd be a good time. Subscriber economy is something we should also talk about. My Suplex is considering buying a taco subscription. And I'm not sure how I feel about subscribing to tacos. Taco Bell has this thing now where you can basically buy a taco pass pay X amount of money.
For a certain amount of tacos a month or whatever?
Oh, you're
Yeah,
back.
I'm back.
Yeah. I was going on a little digression about the subscriber
It's
economy.
weird.
It's weird. Now, don't let it dissuade you from subscribing to our stuff.
Well, you're going to subscribe to your immune system soon. So,
You're going to subscribe to things that may as well be us. But I just thought, Suplex he's been considering buying a taco subscription.
oh, weird.
Because Taco Bell is running a Taco Pass.
Suplex, that's weird. Don't do that, man.
I told him he buys a lot of Taco Bell. So it might be worth it to him.
Yeah.
Right? So, I used to too. There was a period of like every day of the week, 7 days a week, I would eat this Taco Bell steak crunch wrap.
Oof.
And it was delicious. It's fantastic.
Take your word for it.
But so I might also one day get a Taco Pass. Who knows? But back to what we were talking about. So MetaMask has to interact with the blockchain, right? But the blockchain has been built such that clients like MetaMask can interact with it. So, when you look up NFTs or something, MetaMask accomplishes it by doing an API call to one of the three companies that have consolidated in that space. So, let's say you want to know about your recent transaction on Ethereum. Well, MetaMask just makes an API call to etherscan.io. What if you want to display your account balance? Well, MetaMask just makes a call to Infura. What if you want to display your NFT? It makes a call to OpenSea. All it's doing is running this script. It's like get https://api.opensea.io/. That's all it's doing. And so all this, it's really just like a web browser. MetaMask is just a web browser for seeing what's on NFTs. It doesn't have anything on there, right? And so this all feels very, this all is beginning to feel very just recreating what already happened. We decentralized the servers. So in Web 1, everything was decentralized. And then we centralized them. And now we decentralized the servers, but also we didn't. Because the people that access them are centralized. So we really just made sort of the same thing over again because humanity is stuck in a forever loop. This is probably how Atlantis ended.
Nobody wanted to maintain their own servers, and it was the end of them.
You really do. You really need to maintain your own servers or something. And I know but that's the only way. I mean, right now, most of the traffic through the blockchain is done through Infura, OpenSea, Coinbase, and Etherscan, and like everything else is like you can if you want to,
right?
But at some point, the companies become so dominant that it doesn't even really matter. Like if I wanted to have private emails, I can make my own email server, right? And that would be private on my end. However, almost everyone I'm going to email is using Gmail, and so they'll see it anyway. Unless I'm emailing people that are also using a private email server, which is nobody that I want to email, right? So you really has to, unless a lot of people do it, it really has limited utility. Right. So the crypto guys go, listen, it's still early days. It's still early days. Which Moxie says is cryptocurrency's failure to scale beyond relatively nascent engineering is what makes it possible to call it these days early. Because it's already been 10 years.
Well, that and implicit in that claim is that a system that is supposed to be decentralized, that has been completely centralized, is then going to re-decentralize and fix all its problems of centralization. Which is not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and that's because it really wasn't thought through from Satoshi did a good job, whoever he was, of decentralizing server to server thing, but no one thought about, okay, but then how would the clients actually access it? And that was never thought about, and so what the answer is just do it how we already did it.
Well, so he really just built another, in practice, it's just another Swift system. That just like the banks used to transfer money around, and you're a client of the bank. Now the banks are these corporations that operate the nodes.
Right. Now, this isn't going to stop anything because you can't stop a gold rush.
True.
And people will continue to get into it, and people will still make lots of money on it, even though all it is you're buying a URL, you're buying a served up to you from a non-decentralized server URL on a blockchain that points to a piece of artwork on some other server somewhere, just running Apache.
And yeah,
it's all just Linux, really.
Your point about there's still money to be made in it, and the people that make the money in it are the ones that realize that that this is fake, and so therefore they'll know how to get out, and they won't be married to it ideologically. The people that are married to it ideologically, as some sort of utopian vision, are the ones that are going to get fleeced in the end, and the people that know this is just another thing, this is another tulip
it's like
craze.
All gold rushes.
Yeah,
there's the proverb is the only people who got reliably rich off the gold rush were Levi's.
Oh, Levi's jeans, yeah.
Levi's jeans, like the people that made the clothes for the gold miners.
Yeah.
And the people that made the pickaxes, they got rich. The gold miners seldom actually struck gold.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to everyone like trying to get rich off crypto. A few of them will. Some people will strike gold. But the reliable way to do it is to serve tools for people trying to strike gold.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to be rich. So that's... I'm a bit. I don't want to throw a wet blanket on Web3. I admire the ambition, right?
We do have a responsibility to our audience to lay things out in a certain way, to let them know about the truth of it.
Yeah, like I had a NeoCities account for a while. That's how much I like the old internet.
Yeah, man.
NeoCities is like this.
GeoCities?
GeoCities where you can make it again.
Oh, okay.
You remember GeoCities?
Yeah.
Well, GeoCities got taken offline.
Yeah.
And so someone made NeoCities, which is like the whole premise of it is have a 90s website.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
And you can, and they're fun, and people make them, and they're interesting. And I enjoy going there. I spend a lot of internet time that I have internet time on NeoCities.
That's funny.
What happens is that a lot of people like do it as a fun thing that they do, and then they abandon it. Hello?
I'm here, buddy.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, one of my NeoCities that I just pulled up is speaking words. Okay, in German, Japanese. Okay, I was like, what? Like, what's happening? Again, just as I was saying earlier, it just plays a flash sound and you can't stop it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You can live the 90s today. But so what happens is that people even made flash games available on this stuff. But what happens is people get on there and they get all into it, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make a cool website like back in the day, and they do, and then they abandon it. So just like regular GeoCities, it is already just full of interesting defunct sites that no one's going to anymore.
Internet time capsules.
They're internet, yeah, except they're new. But the people just stop. It's strange. But go to NeoCities. Maybe we should all. I think maybe all of our listeners should have a NeoCities page.
That'd be cool.
What if? Here's what we do, listeners. Are you ready? We're going to colonize NeoCities. All of our people that are regular listeners and that interact with us, or if you want to be one of those people, you need to make a NeoCities page, and it's very simple to do. Right? You just sign and then like I want like CC Seeker should have one, and we'll have like a blog ring.
Can you connect websites together in like a federation of?
Yes.
Okay.
Like we're gonna restart. We're just gonna go. We're gonna walk the same path.
We can have like a link roll on the side of the page, and it will link each other's NeoCities accounts.
Yeah. I think that we should actually do that. That would be fun, and also maybe some interesting things would come of that.
That's how you friend somebody is you put a link to their site on yours.
Yes,
and they reciprocate.
I think this is. I'm gonna really do this.
Okay,
There's gonna be a sumo NeoCities.
Yeah,
you should have one too,
I'll get right
and
on
then
that.
other people, if they want to get on if they want to be hip to the vibe, they will also be on NeoCities. But anyway, that's my Web3 wet blanket. I don't want to be that. I want that to happen. But no one has really thought through how it's going to happen. Just like with everything else, people just have a magic incantation when you bring up problems. They say, well, what about all these problems? What about this? And then they go, decentralization, blockchain. And you're like, but that doesn't mean anything. What about this problem, Bitcoin? And then like in other areas of life, they go, yeah, but what about the fact that maybe this virus could maybe spread to like animals? They go, vaccination. It's gonna solve. But what about the fact that other people are still getting it?
Yeah.
And they go, Pfizer. And that's all people do. They just have one word. They do this in every realm of life.
Yeah.
They have one word. People do this in politics. They do this in religion. Right? Like you bring up like a real problem, like a philosophical problem, like the Catholics, and I like to attack Catholics because I'm Catholic, and so it's fair. And they'll be like, but what about this legitimate criticism? And they go, this old document that no one's ever read before. And they give it to you. You're like, but what? This is from like 1557.
Yeah.
And no one's ever heard. How does this solve? It's like, but that means it's infallible. Like, but it doesn't though. And then that, and everyone does this with whatever their pet thing is. They just have a few words. It's called like a thought terminating place. You get to some place in a conversation or train of logic, and their thoughts just terminate and is replaced with some slogan.
It's like or like accusing somebody of racism will, in most cases, instantly shut down whatever they're arguing about.
Yeah, you're like, what about? Okay, you're like, what? Why does gentrification happen? Is it because maybe they go racism?
Yeah,
and that's just it.
Yeah,
that's like this complex idea.
You're right.
It's just like and that's not even the correct answer.
No,
by the way,
it's
because the same problems that we're having now happened when the Irish came over and the Irish not apply. So there's more to it than that. It's not a race thing. It's like a mobility of different economic classes thing.
Yeah, into
different spaces
and different cultures trying to compete for space and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's like it's not even racial at all.
Yeah,
really, because the same thing happens. I mean, the Eastern Europeans treat the Roma this way, and Germans feel this way about the Poles.
Yeah, it's about belief systems that don't correspond with each other.
When they go race, it doesn't even mean it's as useful as going blockchain. Yeah. It doesn't do anything. Yeah. And nothing gets solved.
Yeah.
People don't want to think about it because again, no one wants to run their own servers. No one wants to do their own thinking.
Yeah.
And so they just devolve into ever recurring nonsense. Just like in the military, they do this too. Where they're like, but how would we? Okay, we're expanding NATO, right? But what if Russia actually doesn't like it? And they go, there won't be a problem. It's okay. Like what? But NATO, they don't like NATO. It's just a defensive pact. They have no reason to be afraid.
Yeah, right.
But you're putting bases all around their country. No, it's fine. They're not bases. They're Democrat nodes or whatever they say. It's all stupid. And no one in politics is like. This is why, like the recent thing of the Supreme Court arguing about vaccine mandates, and everyone was amazed at how out of touch they were with like the knowledge of what was happening.
Sotomayor claimed that 100,000 children are in serious condition in hospitals, which is completely incorrect by like major orders of magnitude. I mean,
yeah,
she couldn't be any more retarded and sit on the Supreme Court at the same time. Like she's reached the zenith.
Yeah, and people were sort of surprised, and I was like, guys, our whole world is that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
no one has actually thought about anything in 40 years. No one's ever. The Supreme Court, the people in the Supreme Court are retarded.
Yeah,
they're not any more smarter. They're less like Kavanaugh is a dumb retard. Just because he's on your side, quote unquote, he's still like an idiot.
The only one with a functioning brain is Thomas, in my opinion.
He's the only one with a functioning brain is Thomas. And the rest of them are just you get promoted to being a judge the same way you get promoted to being anything in America, just by towing the party line.
Yeah, and being compromised.
That's the only way you do. There's none of it. You just go racism hard enough, and people are like, he knows what's up.
Yep.
And they promote you up the ladder. But then at some point, all these bluffs get called by reality, and it all falls apart. Just as it's doing now. Like, people they're like, they were talking about, we're gonna mandate vaccines. To which my response was, I mean, you can try. I mean, you can write it on paper. Doesn't mean I'm ever taking it, or me and millions of other people.
Yep.
Like, they have this idea that, like, if they just write it on paper, it's real. Just like if they go, well, I have the NFT. No, you have a URL pointing to something.
Well, they really goofed up when they came off so heavy-handed about this, because they created overnight millions of American men who see it as part of their mission in life as to not get vaccinated, because
I won't get vaccinated for anything ever again.
We are now, and we really are. Like, I'm not being sarcastic. We are now the last defenders of bodily autonomy and personal liberty in this country.
I know,
and it's now personal, and it's a vendetta that will never end. A generation of American men have now been invested with this like blood oath to never participate in this. And guess what, government? You created that. You did it. It's on you. And now
I'm not even taking Advil anymore.
Damn straight.
I'm not taking anything.
Yeah.
I'll just be sitting
because
there dying,
when you talk about, like, you're going to inject our children by force and everybody's going to be compelled to do this, like, what hornet's nest did you idiots think you were going to kick over? You didn't think about it, morons. Now you're getting your comeuppance.
This is the thing. It's very similar. The government thinks they have all this stuff, and a lot of people do too. But really what they have is a URL pointing to something.
Yeah.
They own a constitution that says they can do some stuff.
Right.
But that doesn't actually mean it is going to happen.
Yep.
Right? And that people forget that all the time. And human beings have this weird thing of thinking that if something is on paper, it's real. I don't know why this is.
The Constitution, you're exactly right. It's just a URL that points to an idea that's supposed to be held in the mind and heart of every citizen. And if it isn't there, the Constitution doesn't mean anything. Correct.
The URL is pointing to what should be the meaning of the Constitution living in your server of your own mind.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful analogy. Good job, me. Living in the server of your own mind. But if it's not in the server of your own mind, it's not there. You just get a poop emoji. And so, that's all that's happening.
Yeah.
Is America keeps referencing these papers, thinking that it's there, and they just keep getting back poop emojis.
Yeah.
Because all these paper doesn't mean anything. This is my whole criticism of when, like, the Catholics say this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, that's just words on paper, though. Yeah. And they go, but how do you know it's infallible? I said, because is there a list of infallible? And they say, no. It's so argument in a circle.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to attack them over this forever, because it's a big problem. But everyone's doing that. It's like, if it's on paper, then somehow that makes it real.
Well, the multiplication of laws just entraps everybody in nonsense. When the laws are so complicated that no one can understand them, or really there's no objective interpretation of the body of law, then it's just a trap for everybody to fall into.
Yes. And, well, it's like that old proverb, a dying nation accumulates laws like a dying man accumulates medicines.
Absolutely.
And, but it's like one Cyclops brought up recently. You know, if you see something in a footnote in a book, unless you can actually follow the footnote yourself, you should 100% not believe it. And that's 100% true, because if you look up footnotes and you follow the chain of footnotes, like, this person says this because of this reference. Okay, I'm going to look up that reference, and you go to it. So, oh, they say this because of this reference, and you go to it. They say this because of this reference, and you go to it. And then at some point, it's just some guy going, I saw it in a dream. That really, like, so many of them, if you follow the footnotes, this is real. Follow footnotes, and it gets to somewhere where it's like, somebody says, I think somebody said this one time I heard from my neighbor Stan.
Yeah.
And then someone cites that as authoritative, and someone cites, and then you get this big chain, and it's all just NFTs pointing to URL. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Like the whole body of Western knowledge, and all is just built on sand. There's nothing there, and I know that's upsetting for people, but that is what it is. Like, and sometimes it's self-referential. I've had this happen. You follow a footnote, you follow a footnote, you follow a footnote, and then at some point that footnote goes back to the first one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you're like, what? And like Jordan Peterson did this in his book, where this was great because it was so brazen. In like his 12 Rules for Life book, he wrote something and it was very authoritative sounding and had a footnote. And you looked at the footnote in the back of the book and it was just a footnote to his own book. So he like cited himself. He's like, this is true because of this. And it's like, that's just something you said. You're just citing your own opinion.
Yeah.
Like, what? And then, I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys. There's no like, people have been searching for like a intellectual terra firma.
Well, that's the thing. Something has to actually work in real life. Like if it's not, I mean, math is great because you can actually just do the math and see if the number comes out. But, other stuff is more complicated. Like you actually have to put it into practice and see if it really works. And if it doesn't really work, it's like the vaccines and the masks and all this COVID stuff. People would cite papers upon papers upon papers to me. They would send me journal articles. They would send me studies and experiments that were run that argue this, and therefore masks. And then I was having an argument with somebody, and I said, okay. And so I put on a mask, and I took a big drag off a cigarette, and I blew it into the mask, and of course it comes spraying out the sides, right? Because it's an aerosol, and a mask can't contain aerosols, which is the whole argument is that this is an aerosolized virus and all this stuff. And then I said, all those papers just got blown out of the water by me and a surgical mask and a cigarette. Like your whole argument is invalid because it didn't work. It didn't actually work.
Your correction.
Sort of. No, they didn't say that. They didn't have the temerity to say that it doesn't mean anything. But they also said, well, if we're just going to test everything in our backyard, you're going to end up with this weird epistemological situation where everything is subject to physical testing and critique by everyone. And I said, yes, exactly. That is called, it has to work in real life. That's what this is. Like, it has to cash out in real life in a result, or it doesn't matter how many citations the paper has.
Yeah, this is really, you're getting to the heart of it there. I think what we're experiencing is an epistemological problem.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know what you know?
Right.
And
you can't lean on the ivory tower anymore. The ivory tower has nothing to offer you that doesn't evaporate as soon as you start poking it.
I don't think you can ever lean on it. I mean, how many wars in history have been fought like on the premise of we can definitely take these guys?
Yeah.
And then you get in there like, whoa.
Or
this is not going as you said.
Or the casus belli was fake.
Or the casus belli was fake.
Yeah.
Or, and it's, I don't, yeah, this is why people accuse me of being a Gnostic. And to some degree, I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't see any other option, like, other than you have to know yourself. Right? And like, but what about this? Yeah, but you're still knowing like, if you put authority in someone else, you chose that they were a good authority to listen to. Right? It's like, you never get away from this problem. And I don't see any way around that. And I'm not a Gnostic in the sense of like, I think the physical world is bad. Quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm less of a Gnostic than people that accuse me of it. Like all the Neoplatonist people who are rabidly against anything of the flesh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an epistemological problem. Like, how do you know how do you know your NFT is something? Like, well, it has it's got this giant infrastructure around it, right? So many people are into it. This is what it comes down to. So many people are doing it. Somebody must have checked.
Yeah.
That's the logic.
Yeah.
So many people are doing it. Somebody somewhere must have checked, and they didn't. No one ever did.
Yeah. That was the whole repeatability crisis, was the point that nobody ever checked the work, that they were supposed to be checking each other's work. That's what peer review is. Everybody says, "Oh, is there a peer-reviewed study?" Because they check the work. They don't check the work.
No, because you don't get paid to check the work.
Right.
No one's gonna.
Right.
No one's gonna pay you to check.
It's an influence and credibility thing where I'll sign off on your paper if you sign off on my paper, and we'll both get more grant money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And this is a perfect segue into the fact that AIDS isn't real. And AIDS isn't real. I hate to tell you. AIDS is another one of those things where everyone just started saying, well, everyone's doing it so much and worried about it so much, it must be real. Someone checked somewhere. Nobody ever checked. And we can prove this now.
Now, are we going to save purity tests of the right and right-wing leaders for next week then?
I guess. We talked about Web3 too long.
We did. I got a whole page of notes on that, so we can't waste them though. We'll do it next week.
But this is the listener's fault again. It's not my fault.
Get it together, guys.
Get it together. I just feel like we're pulling these people along. Like they're just not pulling their weight. None of them even have a NeoCity site yet. And it's just... Anyway, yes. For this source, I'm going to cite my sources. For this source, I'm citing David Icke.
Okay.
Now,
bold choice.
Is that a reputable source? Answer: yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because he does he's talking about something in this specific section that you can verify, which I have sort of half done. Because again, no one ever follows the footnotes completely. But he's talking about. Do you remember something that? Do you remember a little fellow who saw an electric owl called Carrie
Mullis? Yeah.
Now, Carrie Mullis is the guy that invented the PCR test, which they've used for the COVID stuff. Mm-hmm. He won a Nobel Prize. He called Anthony Fauci an idiot in the 80s. And so he knows science, right? He knows science. He called Anthony Fauci like a little goblin or something.
Con man, yeah. He was not a fan of Fauci. And he died right before COVID hit the scene.
Isn't
that weird how Carrie Mullis just dropped dead right before COVID?
So Carrie Mullis wrote a book called Dancing in the Mind Field. Mind, M-I-N-D, like your head, mind field. Which was a great book. He's in it, on the cover, he's shirtless with a surfboard. Fun.
Yeah.
So he talks about his experience with studying HIV and AIDS back in the 80s. So he says in his book, Dancing Through the Minefield, that he accepted as just another fact that Luc Montagnier of France's Pasteur Institute and Robert Gallo of America's National Institutes of Health had independently discovered that a retrovirus, dubbed HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus, caused AIDS. After all, everyone was saying it, someone must have checked. They were, after all, specialists in retroviruses, and that's how the medical and science pyramids work, right? Something is announced from on high and said over and over again, and everyone just assumes that it's been checked somewhere, and it never really is. And then you get a replicability crisis, and all your science is fake. So this is the same way that the virus that doesn't exist became the virus that changed the world, the HIV/AIDS fairy story. It grew into a multi-billion-dollar industry and still is.
Yep.
So Mullis had been working in a lab in Santa Monica, and he was using his newfound PCR test, which he was experimenting with, to detect retroviruses in blood donations received by the Red Cross. In doing so, he's making a paper, right? And he wants to cite his sources. He's a guy that cites his sources. He wants to be one of these people that actually checks. And so he asked a virologist friend of his, he says, where can I find a reference for the paper which actually proves HIV caused AIDS? And to his surprise, the virologist said, you don't need a reference. It's just something everybody knows. Common knowledge. Which is, that's not in itself a bad response, because you don't need to say, if you're writing a paper, you don't need to cite that Florida is part of America.
Right.
Right. It's just common knowledge.
Yeah.
You don't need to cite common knowledge is the idea. And he says, Mullis said, yeah, this is, but I want to just quote a reference in here because I'm being sort of specific about details. And so, and he kept asking and no one really gave him an answer. And he started to feel funny about writing a paper and citing this without knowing, like, he's supposed to be an expert. And he's like, I don't know the paper where this was proven. That seemed weird. Like, I need to find it. So eventually one of his virologist friends suggested he cite a report by the CDC on morbidity and mortality. And so Mullis said, great. So he read the report, but it only said that, quote, an organism had been identified. That's all it said.
Mm-hmm.
That an organism had been identified. It did not say how. The report did not identify the original scientific work in which this organism had been identified. So there was no footnote that led anywhere. But all the physicians just assumed that if the CDC was convinced HIV caused AIDS, then they probably checked. So it probably is, right? Mullis continues in his book. He says, quote, this is Kerry Mullis, again, the inventor of the PCR test, Nobel Prize winning scientist. He knows science. He says, I did computer searches. Neither Montagnier, Galileo, nor anyone else had published papers describing experiments which led to the conclusion that the virus known as HIV probably caused AIDS. I read the papers in the journal Science, there's an actual journal called Science. It's a pretty big deal journal, for which they had become well known as AIDS doctors. But all they had said was that they had found evidence of a past infection by something which was probably HIV in some AIDS patients. So they found something that was evidence. So they found evidence of a past infection by something which maybe was HIV in some AIDS patients.
Yep.
That's it. They found, this is Mullis continuing. Quote, they found antibodies. Antibodies to viruses had always been considered evidence of a past disease, not a present disease. Antibodies signaled that the virus had been defeated. The patient had saved himself. There was no indication in these papers that the virus caused the disease. That this virus caused the disease. They didn't show that everybody with the antibodies had the disease. In fact, they found some healthy people with the antibodies. So he's saying antibodies have always been like, oh, you already beat this virus and you know how to beat it, and so then it's not there anymore. And so how can HIV be causing AIDS if you already have the antibodies? Right? If the HIV is gone from your system.
Yeah.
Why do you have the AIDS? So Mullis began asking around, and he asked why their work had been published if Montagnier and Galileo hadn't really found this evidence. And why were they fighting so hard to get credit for the discovery? He says he was hesitant to write in his own paper, quote, HIV is the probable cause of AIDS, until he found published evidence to support that, which seems reasonable, but no one else was doing it. Just like no one else in all this NFT space has ever bothered to look up what an NFT actually is, and it's just a token that points to the URL in it. That's all. No one ever bothered. Millions of people are like, no one ever bothered to look at, like, what is this actually doing? Right? So he says, Mullis reasonably was like tens of thousands of scientists and researchers were spending billions of dollars a year of research based on this idea that HIV caused AIDS. The reason had to be somewhere, he thought. Otherwise, they would not have settled into this narrow channel of investigation. Like, they surely the people spending billions of dollars and dedicating their lives to AIDS are familiar with the paper that demonstrated that HIV does cause AIDS. Surely that's happening, right? And he says, everyone I talked to said something. Everyone had the answer at home, in the office, in some drawer. They all knew. They would send me the papers as soon as they got back. But I never got any papers. Nobody ever sent me the news about how AIDS was caused by HIV. So eventually at a conference, Mullis was able to ask Montagnier himself about the reference proof when Montagnier came to a lecture in San Diego. And Mullis says this was the last time he would ask the question about AIDS without showing anger. Montagnier himself, the guy that supposedly discovered this link, told him that he should reference the CDC report. I did read it, Mullis said. It didn't answer the question. If, quote, again, Mullis, if Montagnier didn't know the answer, who the hell did? Then one night when Mullis was driving, when an interview came on NPR with Peter Duesberg, a prominent virologist at Berkeley and California Scientist of the Year, Mullis finally understood why he could not find any references that proved HIV caused AIDS, because there weren't any. No one had ever proved the connection. Even though it had spawned millions of dollars industries, $1 billion industries, and the media was repeating it every day as fact, terrifying people about AIDS and how, like, if they had sex with someone, they would die, and giving the impression that a positive test for HIV, parentheses, see COVID, was a death sentence. Duisberg was a threat to the AIDS gravy train and the agenda that underpinned it. He was therefore abused and castigated, and after he told the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, there was no good evidence implicated the new virus, quote unquote. Editors rejected his manuscripts, and his research funds were deleted. Mullis points out that if the CDC has defined AIDS as one of more than 30 diseases that, if accompanied by a positive result on a test, detects antibodies to HIV. So basically, if you're sick with something and you also have this, then AIDS is causing it.
Yep.
But if you have the same disease and you don't have a positive HIV test, then it's just something else.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like these men that are sick will go and get an HIV test. And if they test positive, that's all they treat for. They might have all sorts of other problems that may or may not at some point be discovered. But the whole basis of the treatment is like, you've got HIV, we've got to treat you. We got to put you on HIV prophylaxis and all this stuff. And it may not even be related.
No, it's not. Probably not.
Yeah.
I'm going to read you a paragraph from Kerry Mullis, and tell me if you can't also apply this to the COVID thing. He says, quote, "If an HIV positive woman develops uterine cancer, for example, she is considered to have AIDS. If she's not HIV positive, she simply has uterine cancer. An HIV positive man with tuberculosis has AIDS. If he tests negative, he simply has tuberculosis. If he lives in Kenya or Colombia, where the tests for HIV antibodies are too expensive, he is simply presumed to have the antibodies and therefore AIDS, and therefore he can be treated in the World Health Organization's clinic. It is the only medical help available in some places, and it's free because the countries that support WHO are worried about AIDS." So the whole reason Africa ever had a quote-unquote AIDS problem is because they didn't have any tests, because they were too expensive.
Think about
so
the giant pipeline.
They did because they were sick.
The pipeline of money that this created. Just declaring all these people having AIDS and giving them AIDS treatment, and panicky governments just dumping money on getting AIDS under control. Think about the money that went into that. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. It's just a money sink. And here's the thing, guys, you can't even get sick from viruses. I'm more and more convinced of that.
I'm not so sure. I'd spent the last month sick from viruses.
No, you were sick and you had viruses. I don't know that one is the cause of the other.
I know the distinction you're making, but
here's the thing. How could it work? I keep asking people, how could it work? They're actually inanimate objects. Like a virus if you put it in a petri dish, it just sits there. It doesn't move. It doesn't metabolize. Yeah. It doesn't replicate. It doesn't eat. It doesn't. None of it. It's just a little piece of nothing. It's like a little piece of dust.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. How could it possibly be doing anything? Bacteria, I get. They're alive. They multiply. They can get into your like wet nasal passages and grow, and it can be a problem. But viruses don't. What are you even talking about? They don't. How could it even work? And I ask people this, like, how could it happen? And no one can give me an answer. I'm like, how could that be? And so increasingly I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not.
It is true that the standard model of how viruses work has never actually been observed to happen.
No, people just assume. Yeah. No one ever saw corona get into your cells with spikes.
Yeah.
Never happened. You just think it did because people repeat it so much. But it's the same thing. It's just people buying and trading NFTs, and they think it's real, and they look at it and it's a URL to a poop emoji, and that's all it's ever been.
Right.
And that's all the whole world has ever been. It's all just URLs to poop emojis, all the way down. It's all it is, and it's unfortunate, but also liberating, because now you can go and experiment with yourself on our NeoCity sites, which we should all have.
Well, going back to the HIV thing. I mean, when that I know we've talked about it on the show before, but when that whole scare went down, the amount of money that was funneled into that thing, the crazy treatments they were putting people on, like AZT, that were just death sentences that were toxic, and people were just dying from the treatments. It was the scandal of the century. What happened?
Was anyone ever held accountable for it?
No, because Fauci literally was in charge of that whole scandal. The entire AIDS scandal, Fauci was in charge of that, just like he's in charge of coronavirus. It's the same script over again. And anybody that doesn't, that can't, if you as a human being in 2022 have not made the connection between AIDS and coronavirus and Anthony Fauci, and it's a total repeat. Like, create giant scare, huge money funnel, sketchy treatments that don't work. Maybe the whole thing is predicated on some false scientific assumptions that are not provable. And then eventually it burns out and they go away.
Hello?
Uh-oh. We lost Sumo.
Hold on.
Stand by, audience.
Hold on.
Are you back?
I'm back. Okay. So you said sketchy things which are not provable.
Sketchy?
I clicked I clicked an icon, and because everything sucks, it just broke.
It does. But then eventually the money dries up, or it just becomes, the system becomes endemic and quiets down, because nobody really, unless you're like in the homosexual community, nobody talks about or worries about HIV anymore.
I don't even think they do anymore, to be honest.
No, they don't, because a lot of them have figured out that being HIV positive doesn't cause AIDS. There are AIDS researchers and clinicians that will straight up tell you. Patrick Henningsen did an episode with one of these guys a while back, and he's a gay man. You know, he's all into this stuff, and he's an AIDS researcher and a clinician. And he'll straight up say, like, dude, there are people that have AIDS that are not HIV positive. They have all the symptoms and they have this AIDS syndrome. They have it. They haven't tested. They don't have HIV antibodies. And then there are tons of people that have HIV antibodies that have no disease whatsoever.
Yeah, it's all fake. Everything's been fake your whole life.
And he's convinced that and this is a gay guy saying this. He's saying that the AIDS syndrome is a resultant of lifestyle choices. Wink, wink. You know, things that people do to their bodies that make them sick because they're introducing all sorts of stuff.
All right, I'm going to disprove AIDS in one sentence.
Do it.
One word. Elton John.
How was that guy
was real,
still alive?
He would be dead.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
Yeah.
But he's not dead. Right? He lives through the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's not real.
Yeah.
Right? So, and also their poster child was a guy whose name was Magic Penis.
Right? Magic Johnson.
It doesn't, that's just, they're just laughing in your face about how stupid you are.
Oh,
when
man.
they name people like that and they say, yeah, it's this guy.
Yeah.
And that's how you get this STD. It's not. But
you know, the real shame is that the HIV myth allowed everybody to somewhat detach their choices that they're making with their body from their state of their health. Right? Because what they can say...
is what everyone wants.
Right. Because now you can tell somebody, oh, sorry, you have HIV. There's no cure. All these things that you're suffering are as a result of that, and we can try to manage them for you, but maybe or maybe not. There's not a lot we can do. And so once you give somebody that, they don't have a really big reason. They're like, well, I already got HIV. I don't really have any reason to live a clean life anymore. It's going to kill me eventually. I might as well just like lean into it and completely indulge and give myself over to the passions of the flesh. Okay. And so people get this diagnosis, and a lot of them, not all of them, some of them, you know, it's a wake up call or whatever, but a lot of people just live, not just homosexuals, all sorts of people with drugs and all kind of stuff. They just live that way because they're like, oh, well, I'm doomed. And it detaches like the choices that you make every day from the quality of your life. You know, it's like telling somebody that they're fat because of their genetics, and it's like, well, I'm destined to be fat forever. So what's the point of even trying? Mm-hmm.
Or with COVID, I really just wanna stay inside and never see anybody again. Can I please have a scientific doctor's note to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a lot of it. Like,
people want to withdraw from society, and they wanted an excuse, and they got it. And they're still taking it. Like, especially people that live in big cities. And I was thinking about this recently, is that the modern megacity, now not all cities, okay? I'm talking about modern megacities specifically, are designed to make people hate each other and distrust each other. Like, everything about it fosters distrust and suspicion and the desire to withdraw from other people. And I can see it in myself as the city I live near is rapidly expanding and overtaking my area. I will confess that I am becoming mistrustful of my fellow man more than I was. I'm becoming more withdrawn because the kind of the medium of is the message idea is that the compression and the intensity and the conflict and the idea that the people you're interacting with, you have no idea what they believe about right and wrong, about the value of human life, about all sorts of things. And therefore, you cannot predict how they will react. And so you have no reason to trust them. All that is designed to make people withdraw, to alienate people from each other. And this is a symptom of the modern megacity. This isn't the symptom of the village or the small town or even the traditional city. Like I'm thinking, Florence, Italy didn't have a problem quite like this, back in the day that we have now because of technology and travel and all that.
I really
sort
think
of
you
thing.
have to. The solution to that, from an architectural perspective, is you have to put a wall around their city, because not to keep people out, but to constrain the city.
Yeah, it needs.
Because right
there's
now,
no borders
imagine,
anymore. When we tore down all the borders, we created this problem, and humanity still hasn't understood that. But then, just going back to the COVID thing, but then all these city dwellers that were feeling all this, they needed some way to be able to justify their isolation from their fellow man, because I think everybody knows it's wrong to be a shut-in and to never interact with anybody, or to only interact with people that you've vetted on social media, because social media is like it's like you can create borders in your life again, and you can let certain people in and exclude others. And so if you can't do that in real life, you do it on social media to cope with the stress of having zero control of your environment in real life. And so what did COVID do? It gave everybody an excuse, a science reason to withdraw onto the internet and put your whole life intermediated through the internet, because that gives you back borders and control and the ability to interact with people that you can trust because you understand their belief system and they understand yours.
Yeah. This is why the metaverse is inevitable. We're all just going into the Matrix.
Well, city dwellers will. So it's like, I'm
going to be on the metaverse. I think it'll be fun. I'm just not going to get sucked into it.
Well, there's
I'm
a
be on there and
different
troll people.
There's a correlation between the city like expanding and growing and getting busier, and me. I used to see people that I know in public and now I don't. And there's a correlation between all those phenomena and the time I spend on Twitter. Just for example, because on Twitter, all those people are vetted, and the people I interact with, like, I don't go out and do, internet blood sports like some people do. I have no interest in that. I want to interact with people that I understand and that I trust. And I can either get in my car and drive 30 minutes to my friend's house who's also busy and may or may not, like, we can see each other, once a week or something, but it's kind of difficult. Or I can just open Twitter and like look and read what people are saying and comment on it. And it's all people that I've vetted, that I have a basic understanding of their belief system. And it's like an escape hatch from the chaos, the total chaos and alienation of living in the modern megacity, where your neighbors change constantly. They may be, you have no idea what they believe or where they're from or anything. So that's crazy when the internet is like the escape hatch from the chaos of real life. You got a problem. There's way too much chaos.
Yeah, I think we need to talk, and maybe we need to do a whole show on this, but the new Matrix movie, I think, is dealing with that issue. Yeah. Is like
maybe.
Because it has some interesting, I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. But here's the thing. It's actually okay. I don't know. It's not the first one.
Yeah.
But like, it's not like, how Star Wars, like, just ruined Star Wars. The new ones, they just trashed it.
Yeah.
This one was actually a decent and valid attempt. And so, but it also had some interesting, because I think the first three were dealing with like, okay, we're going into the digital world and like, what is that going to mean? Like when everyone's online all the time. And they correctly predicted that it would create a fake world that people would be trapped in. I think this is what I've been trying to wake people up to. Like the Matrix is sort of real. The information you've been fed is not true. It's been filtered through. It's this giant pyramid of nothing. It's an upside down pyramid. And you need to wake up from that in order to be free. Like I am basically Morpheus, right? I'm actually black. A lot of people don't know that. And I wear a trench coat.
It's true.
I'm basically Morpheus, right? And you're like Trinity.
Yeah, naturally. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And, but this new one is dealing with like, okay, but that happened already. Like we accepted that. We accepted now how, and there's an interesting concept here. This is a tiny spoiler if you want to cut it off now, but tiny. There's this concept of, I forget what they call them, but basically in the first Matrix movies, everyone there was like a person in a pod, right?
Yeah.
And in this one, a lot of people are people in pods, but they also just have basically NPCs. They introduced, they don't know they're just code, right? But they're not agents. They're just people, personalities that have been placed in the system at any time. And then if people go against the system, they can they use like a mass swarm effect, like a zombie apocalypse. And they all flip on and attack.
Ooh.
Just like the real world, just like these NPCs who've.
I might have to go watch this.
Like, oh man, that's true.
Yeah.
And it also, the way the movie goes, it predicts how that will play out, and it's sort of scary. It's like, yeah, because you were sort of right about the first ones and how the technology would affect us.
Yeah.
And this concept of like a lot of people are now, because in the new Matrix, the premise is a lot of the people aren't even real on any level.
Wow,
Not they're in a fake reality. They've gone so into the fake reality they're not even real anymore. They're just mouthpieces for the Matrix.
Yeah.
And that's true. And so we're here dropping red pills, and you can take, now, should you take red pills from a strange black man in a trench coat that comes to you in an alleyway?
I'm wearing
In general, no.
leather pants if that helps your decision.
In general, no. But if you're wearing leather pants, and I know that our listeners are, lederhosen, in fact, then you should. And you should take our red pills. Because they're just gonna... What if we just offer people, like, I'm just standing there with, like, a Dayquil and a NyQuil? Choose. And then that's actually how you...
Do you want to feel perky or sleepy?
That's actually how you escape. Which one is their day? Is the red day?
I think it's orange. And then the night
Or is the orange day?
Green, yeah.
I think the orange is day, right? Isn't that interesting symbolically that the blue one's the one that puts you to sleep?
It's actually green, but...
Whatever.
You talking about Matrix or you talking about NyQuil?
I don't remember NyQuil.
NyQuils are green and orange.
Are you sure NyQuils are green?
Yeah, dude.
I don't take medicine, so I don't know anymore. But
good for you.
I could have sworn they were blue. What's blue? Is there a blue pill, like a blue?
I don't know.
Over-the-counter medication? There must be.
Surely, yeah.
But anyway, one of the ways. Here's another spoiler. I don't believe in spoilers. Personally, because people telling me about the movie has never ruined the movie for me. I don't understand that.
Yeah, either the movie's good or it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't. But so Neo is back in the Matrix, obviously through complicated means. But he sees a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is like an agent of the Matrix designed to keep him asleep, and he keeps prescribing him medicine to help him with his psychosis because he feels the world is off somehow. And this medicine is, of course, in the form of blue pills.
Yeah.
And so one of the other underlying premises is that psychology and people and the over-medication of individuals is how people that want to wake up allow themselves to stay asleep. And they take antidepressant pills, they take SSRIs, they take all this. Well, the new Matrix movie has a lot of philosophical concepts in it.
There's a lot of people out there that are upset and depressed because something really is wrong. Yeah. Like you can't discount the idea that they might be right. In fact, I'm beginning to think that the Wachowskis are just being trans as a troll. Why was this movie a little too based?
This may be part of the performance art of the like seriously, I'm beginning to think that they committed so much to this idea of like creating the fake reality that they did this to mess with people.
Yeah.
Because I don't get the vibe from like Lana or whatever that she's actually maybe, but I'm sort of thinking that they're like they've gone into this Matrix idea so much that they're showing people how society allows you to take on a different character, just like in the movies. Like if you wanted to be a different avatar, you could.
Right.
And I sort of feel like that's what they're doing. It's an interesting.
Wouldn't it be awesome if like they win an Academy Award and they were up on stage accepting it and they explode out of their bodysuits and they're like back to being the regular
Like he just
Wachowski
pushes
brothers.
a button and his breasts explode.
like the whole thing just
stage.
peels off and the old Wachowski brothers are inside and they're said, ha ha.
And they're wearing shades and leather jackets.
Yeah, and then they fly off. They
fly into the space. Yes.
This is a
that may be
beautiful.
No, but
vision.
I seriously am beginning to suspect that they may be trans as a performance piece.
So they're trans.
I think they may be. Okay. I think that because they did some really interesting things with the first 3 Matrix movies, and this one too, because like they're not subtle about it. It's like, I mean, they are if you're blue pilled in real life. Like if you're not awake to these things, you won't notice. But like the fact that like psychiatry and psychology and the medicine industry is keeping you asleep and in the Matrix. And that like so many people have gone so into it that they are now NPCs are very much like not what a trans woman would usually say.
Yeah.
Like they're operating from the realm of like a more of a right-wing man.
Yeah.
And so I'm beginning to wonder if they're just like one of these horseshoe things where they've gone around and like this was really just a performance piece. They may carry to their grave, I don't know, but I'm sort of fascinated by those two.
I guess time will tell.
Time will tell. I hope that their breasts do explode on stage and they fly off into space. That would be awesome.
That would be the best.
Yeah. Maybe that'll happen to you and me. Maybe that's how this show ends.
Yeah. Maybe.
One day we're just on show and our breasts explode. And you find out that really the whole time I was actually the Oracle.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Be pretty cool.
My favorite character was the Merovingian, really. He makes an interesting thing in this movie too. But yeah, everything's just in URLs to poop emojis. I don't know.
You know, every time I write big notes for a show, you end up changing the topic and we don't do them. It doesn't happen very often.
Targets up here, we just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.